Hi everyone, it's Nina. Thanks so much for joining me today for a new video, and I am so excited to be showcasing the brand new distress color from Tim Holtz, which is Prize Ribbon. This is a beautiful blue color, and I just love how it paired with some of the other existing distress colors. I'm going to do one of my favorite distressing techniques, which is ink smooshing. It's something I've done for years, and I just love the way that distress inks play together and create such organic, beautiful backgrounds. So I'm going to use the new Prize Ribbon color and show you how I mixed it with a few other distressing colors. And we're going to also do a bit of embossing with a Simon Says Stamp embossing folder. So why don't we jump on in and check out the color first. So I have Prize Ribbon Distress Ink and Spray Stain. These are the two products that I'm going to be using today from the new Prize Ribbon collection. I love this blue color. It's such a gorgeous, rich blue, and I'm going to put it onto a piece of paper here just so you can see how it looks. It's a very royal looking blue, and I have a feeling that this ink is going to be well used amongst all the crafters. That blue just pairs perfectly with so many other colors. So I'm going to start by bringing out my products that I'm going to need for ink smooshing. I've got a piece of plastic here, some distressing colors in Chip Sapphire, Wilted Violet, Hickory Smoke, which I did change to Black Soot. I also am using Salvaged Patina, which is a new color from Tim Holtz, and of course Prize Ribbon. I'm smushing the ink onto my piece of plastic here, and I'm going to spritz it with a bit of water to get that ink moving. Then onto a piece of Distress Heavy Stock, I'm going to go ahead and start smushing this ink. Now in between layers, I am drying. You don't have to. I like mixing and matching. Sometimes I'll dry and then other times I won't. But for certain colors, I do like to make sure that most of the ink is dry before I add the next layer because I may want to maintain some of the definition between each color. So that's why I choose whether to dry or not in between each layer. After I added Wilted Violet, I'm going to bring in Prize Ribbon. Wait till you see how this layers over top of these other colors. It's just so pretty. I'm smushing this in varying places across my background. This is one of the cool things about distressing smushing is that when you're using a piece of plastic like this to control where the ink is going, you have a bit more control over the final product. Of course, anytime you're ink smushing, you never know how something is going to mix and react with another color and how the colors are going to dry over time. But I really like being able to control the placement. So I like using a piece of plastic here just to help give me a little bit more control of where I'm going. Now I did show you Hickory Smoke at the beginning of this video, but I decided I needed a little bit more darker color. So that's why I chose Black Soot for the final bit of inking over top of these other colors. I wanted some nice contrast here, and so adding that Black Soot is really going to provide that really deep punch of color. If you have any spots that need any filling in, I typically will come back in with a bit more ink smushing and fill those in. Another way I like to fill in the areas is with an ink blending tool, and I'll show you that here in a second. I have some water here that I'm splattering over top of my background. Because we all know how reactive distress inks are to water, I love creating the water spots. Now, I like to dry mine sometimes in between actually lifting them off of the paper. It forces the water to really penetrate the ink, and I really like the harder lines that this provides. In my splatter box, I'm going to splatter a few spritzes of the Distress Spray Stain of Prize Ribbon. After I have those applied and dried, now I'm going to add that final layer of ink to fill in any of the white spaces that I don't want to keep. So I'm going to use my Positively Everything tool, which I've been using throughout the video here, and I'm going to use that to hold my ink pad in place as I ink blend some of the Prize Ribbon color around the edges of my background and in some of the white areas that got left behind. Alright, so I have my embossing folder here. This is Wildflower Fields from Simon Says Stamp. I'm going to emboss the beautiful floral pattern here onto my background, and I'll run this through my die cut machine. I'm using a Big Shot to emboss my embossing folder, so I'm going to go ahead and lay the embossing folder on the lowest platform setting, and then I'll put a cutting plate over top of that as I run it through the machine. Once I have this run through, I'm going to pull it back out, and we're going to be left with this beautiful embossed pattern. Now, I can't see it too well right now, but that's where I'm going to show you how we're going to enhance it. Taking a white pigment ink pad, I'm just going to carefully drag this over top of my embossing. Because the design is raised over top of our pattern here, it's going to pick up that white ink. I'm very, very carefully applying this down. I don't want to push too hard because I don't want to add this ink onto other areas of my background. All I want is to have some of that ink on the raised surface. And as you can see, as I do this, it's giving this pattern a beautiful definition and making it pop off of the background. I'm going to use some fairy dust embossing powder from Brutus Monroe. This is a clear embossing glitter, and I really love how this glitter looks, especially on darker colors. So because I used pigment ink to apply the ink on top of my flowers, it's a wet ink. It doesn't dry as quickly as a dye ink, so which means it'll hold on to the embossing powder beautifully, just like embossing ink. So I'll heat set that, and once it's completely set, then I'll bring in another layer of distress ink. This is the prize ribbon, of course, and I'm applying this over top of the flowers so that way I create a bit of a shadow behind them. Of course, the embossing powder is picking up some of that ink color, but that's okay. We're going to clean that up with a rag. And I've actually sprayed this rag with some Simon Says stamp cleaner. I use just a small spritz right in the middle of my rag, and then I carefully wipe that rag over top of the raised surface. This doesn't change the ink underneath, but what it does do is take off all that extra ink that's sitting on top of the embossing powder. So there's our background completely finished, and it's time to just add a few more embellishments. So I pulled out some shimmer mist from Brutus Monroe. It's one of my favorite mists right now, and I'm splattering this onto my background for a little bit of sparkle that'll catch the light nicely. I decided I wanted to turn this background into an edge-to-edge shaker card. If you've watched my channel lately, you know how much I've been enjoying making these. I'm going to cover the backside of this background with some red line tape. You don't have to use red line tape. I've mentioned this before in my other videos. You can use any double-sided tape you want. I just like red line tape, and I know other people aren't as big of fans of it, but I really like it. So I'm going to use that to hold my plastic, which is just a piece of stamp packaging. And I'm just going to go ahead and lay my background onto the center of that packaging, which is cut slightly larger than my card. And I'll start carefully folding the edges of my plastic into the adhesive. Now you'll notice that I only have 3 edges of my adhesive actually exposed. That's because I need to be able to fill this shaker before I close up the 4th edge. The other thing that I'm doing is as I fold the edges over, I'm snipping the corners of my plastic. And that just helps fold this plastic a little bit easier around the next edge. Again, you don't have to do this. It's not a required step, but you might have some excess plastic from one of your edges hanging out the backside of your shaker. So if you do find that happen, you can always trim it off afterwards too. I'm going to fill my shaker with some sequins. I've got a bunch of different sequins here. This blue mix was from Simon Says Stamp. I have some flowers here from Lucy's Cards, and I'm going to use some moonshine sequins from Simon Says Stamp. I'll throw all of these into this shaker. I'm not using a ton of sequins just because I don't want to cover up my beautiful background and the florals. So I just put a small mix in there, which gives me a nice assortment of shaker bits, but doesn't make it too full where we lose all of the beautiful inking and background that we created here. My final edge is going to get folded over across the top, and then that's going to complete my shaker. I love how this looks with those beautiful flower blossoms floating along with my wildflower garden. It just looks so pretty. I'm going to mount this entire shaker onto a black card base. This is an A2 Simon Says Stamp card I made from their black cardstock. I'm also going to die cut a sentiment. I'm using this beautiful holographic silver, and I'm going to die cut this with this small script trio die set. Now I wasn't sure if I wanted to use thanks or loved, but in the end I decided to go with the word thanks. Now because this sentiment is so delicate, and I'm stacking 3 of them together, I did spray these with some spray adhesive just to make adhering them a lot easier. They're very small, and I wanted to make sure that I didn't miss any areas. My card is almost done, but I needed to pull out another sentiment to pair up with the word thanks. So I'm going to use this greeting here from the SLIMLINE FLORALS stamp set that I actually illustrated for Simon Says Stamp, and I'm going to emboss the sentiment that reads, "For everything you do." And that's going to pair up nicely with the word thanks. I'm going to stamp this with embossing ink onto some sugar plum cardstock from Lawn Fawn. Once I've stamped that down, I'll use white embossing powder to sprinkle over top of the sentiment so that way I can heat set this for a really nice, beautiful, crisp sentiment on top of that purple cardstock. Once I've embossed the sentiment, then I can die cut it with the Sentiment Labels die set from Simon Says Stamp. This is a versatile set that I use constantly for cutting out small greetings. I'm going to glue my thanks onto the shaker card right down along the middle bottom portion of the card. I used some Simon Says Stamp Craft Tacky Glue, and then I adhered my sentiment strip that I had created with a bit of foam tape, and that's just going to layer really nicely underneath the word thanks. My card is complete. I love the combination of the ink smooshing with the embossed details of that embossing folder from Simon Says Stamp. The new prize ribbon color is just spectacular in that background. It's such a rich blue and it paired perfectly with the ink colors that I've chosen to do my ink smooshing. I hope you were inspired by today's video using this new distress color. It's such a good one. If you are interested in learning more about the new color, as well as the other products that are part of this new color collection, be sure to check out the video that Tim Holtz did about the new color. It's a great video to watch. He goes through all the details about the new color and why they work great with other colors. It's a really in-depth video with a lot of great information. I think it's worth checking out. So I'll have that linked here in the upper right-hand corner so that you can find that video. Thanks again for watching this video. If you enjoyed, please give it a big thumbs up. And if you haven't already subscribed to my channel, I would love to have you be a regular viewer. For those of you that have subscribed already, thank you so much. I can't tell you how much I appreciate you watching my videos. I will be back very, very soon with more inspiration for you all. But until next time, I hope everyone has a very wonderful day. Bye!